Do you like 80s action films? Do you like going to war and being shot at?
Getting shot at! Oh! Of course you don't. You don't want to be shot at, but you want to relive those cool 80s action moments in another form of entertainment. Video games. The 80s action films were part of my childhood growing up, as well as looking for NES games that had the same feel as my action movies. I also remember borrowing a friend's game, renting out a game, or stopping by the local arcade. Military games are awesome, and I still play these games as an adult. Join me as I recount some of the games that shaped my childhood in my top NES military games.
First up, we have Iron Tank, The Invasion of Normandy. This top-down action game was developed and published by SNK in 1988 and turned the bloody D-Day invasion into a thrilling shooting game.
Dr. Corporate, approve memos, lead a workshop, remember birthdays, direct workload, my own fast.
I played a ton of this game as a kid, thanks to my buddy Josh, who had his own copy of it at his house. Looking back at Iron Tank as an adult, it kind of reminds me of Fury, the World War II tank movie with Brad Pitt and John Bernthal. Iron Tank also plays pretty similarly to the NES game Jackal, which came out the same year just a few months later. Now that I'm thinking about it, the main character's codename in Iron Tank is Snake. Is that supposed to be a Metal Gear reference? Metal Gear was released a year before, after all. No one screams Snake when you die in this game, though. Also released in 1988 was the NES port of Platoon, a game based on the Oliver Stone film from 1986. Most people would tell you that this game sucks, worse than being left behind by your squad.
Okay, I think it's safe, but where are we? Yeah, it looks like a Teletubby.
I think I'd rather be back at the war.
Yeah.
Going this way.
Yeah, let's go back. Let's go back.
But I actually really like it. Once you get past the Viet Cong ambush in the first level, that is. Those suckers jump out from behind trees and all over the place. Oh, and the animation for throwing a grenade is way too long. Seriously, if he's waiting to see if the grenade will explode in his hand, if it was me, I'd get rid of that thing as soon as I pulled the pin. I know a lot of people might scoff and say this is a bad game, but I actually enjoyed it when I was a kid. And you know what? Give it a try if you're interested in playing it. Granted, it has kind of bad controls and you get hit a lot by the enemy, but for some reason I loved pushing through this game in order to beat it. After I saw Gun Maverick, I had a need for speed. But instead of playing Ace Combat 7 to get behind the controls of the Dark Star experimental aircraft from the movie, I chose to play 1991's Top Gun, the second mission on the NES.
It's not quite the same thing. In fact, it sucks.
It's good. It's good.
In Top Gun, you fly an F-14 Tomcat, which this game has 3 missions. The first mission consists of destroying a Tupolev Tu-160 Blackjack. The second mission has you attack a Mi-24 Hind helicopter, and the third mission is to blow up the Star Wars space shuttle. This game is fun if you use the NES Advantage compared to the normal controller. You are armed with a machine gun and missiles, which you get to pick in the beginning of the mission. The graphics seem to be improved and landing the carrier is easier. I still need to work on that. It's really not a bad game. Try the first Top Gun game as well, since I considered it fun.
Dive, dive! Rig for deep submergence.
Make your depth 6'2" feet.
6'2", aye.
Torpedoes away.
I've always been fascinated by submarine simulator games, and most of that can be traced back to my time playing Silent Service on the NES. Silent Service was released in 1989 and put you in the commander seat of your very own World War II submarine, with the goal of hunting down enemy ships and blowing them to Kingdom Come.
Hey Jason. Hey, get up, man. It's your turn to be on watch. It's my turn to hit the rack.
Okay.
Man, I can't wait to hit the rack. Wait a minute, what's this? Why is the rack sticky?
Oh, it's okay. Got a little hungry and had a midnight snack. A little bit of syrup. I can leave it for you.
Silent Service is a PC port. I'll show some pics of what the original PC game looked like. This is the MS-DOS game, designed by Sid Meier himself. This NES port was developed by Rare and published by Ultra Games Konami. This Nintendo port does a good job in recreating the PC game. This game has 3 game modes: torpedo and gun practice, convoy actions, and war patrols. You can increase the speed of your time. I usually do this when I'm hunting other convoy ships. I do enjoy using my torpedoes and landing my shots to sink that ship. It is an enjoyable simulator for me. It doesn't have music. You just hear the engines doing their job, but you can always pop in the Village People and listen to their song. Guerrilla War is a 2-player military game that was another favorite of mine. I played it anytime I had a friend over, since it was the only co-op game I had. I didn't have unlimited games like Josh did. Anyways, Guerrilla War was the go-to game for a lot of people when it came out. Why, you ask? Well, one player would play as Che Guevara, and the other player would be Fidel Castro.
Fidel Castro?
Give this game a try, or better yet, get a friend. If you have friends and play it together, I would consider this a must-own in your NES library.
You men are not prisoners of war. You are common criminals.
And fighting back.
Have you seen Missing in Action 2? It's a Chuck Norris movie, so you know what to expect. Good guy escapes and goes on a one-man rescue mission. But the game does something different. It always made me scratch my head. He builds a bomb in a prison cell. How? Where'd he get the explosives from?
Got the TNT.
Nice.
Let's do this.
Alright, I got the lighter.
All right.
Okay, can light it up.
All right, let's go.
POW Prisoners of War does a similar thing, and that always made me chuckle. How I got this game is actually a fun story. I picked it up in Colorado when I was visiting my cousins for the holidays. My mom bought it for me since they only had Contra on the NES. And that game gets old pretty quickly, especially on the 100th time playing it. I probably should have gotten an RPG instead of, since POW is pretty short, but it was still a good time. Especially when you kick or punch an enemy off screen. Classic. I mentioned Jackal before, but the game itself had to be higher up on this list. I loved playing the game back when it hit arcades, and when it finally made its way to the NES, my friends and I were hyped about it. We spent entire sleepovers taking turns playing Jackal, and I can still hear the sound effect of that 50 caliber machine gun in my sleep. Part of the game's appeal was how fun it was to control. Your machine gun always fired forward, but grenades and rockets fired in whatever direction the Jeep was facing. It just made sense. It was super fun, and I wish they would have remastered or re-released this game so I can relive those days. Or maybe that would just make me feel old. If you were an 80s kid like me, you remember the G.I. Joe's catchphrase.
Yeah, tell him how you feel. And remember, running away
leads nowhere. Now I know. And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
He's absolutely right, because if I knew Back to the Future 2 and 3 by LGN was going to be trash, I would have played G.I. Joe, a real American hero, on the NES way sooner. We have Duke, whom I'm familiar with on the cartoon. He is an E8 First Sergeant and the Field Commander, which is the second in command of the Joes. Okay, we have codename Blue Falcon, aka the Buddy, Blank, weapon type, the Backstabber, combat specialty, throw you under the bus. Snake Eyes is the team's original commando and ninja. He is an E7, which is a Sergeant First Class in the Army. He's one of my favorite Joes since I love ninjas. He also doesn't talk in the cartoon. Captain Gridiron is a football quarterback that is in the Army as a captain. Lastly, we have Rock and Roll. He's in the Army as an E7 Sergeant First Class. For my birthday, it was between these two games, and I picked Back to the Future 2 and 3 off of QVC instead of getting it at KB Toys. The awesome G.I. Joe box sitting on the shelf at that KB Toys still haunts me to this day. I never actually played G.I. Joe until I was an adult, when I thought I would be a Navy man with a parrot just like Shipwreck.
I did become a Navy man, but I ended up settling for a cockatiel instead.
Depressing life choices aside, this G.I. Joe game on the NES is a must-play if you can find it somewhere. If only the DeLorean from Back to the Future was real. I would use it to go back in time and buy G.I. Joe instead.
No! Not him!
The next one might be a little controversial. Rambo on the NES must have not been a very popular game, because it was always available to rent at my video store. Maybe because you fought giant bugs and animals rather than the human enemies Rambo faces in the movies. Rambo is a side-scroller action-adventure game in which they issue you a knife for your mission. A knife and a camera? These things? How about guns? There is a funny dialogue sentence between Colonel Troutman and Rambo. If you say no, the game won't start. The more you progress in the game, the more you'll be treated to other weapons, of course, and your explosive tipped arrows. I always enjoyed this game as a kid. I pictured myself as Rambo, a one-man army taking on the enemy soldiers. I would consider this game a hidden wait, I can't call it that. Should I call it a hidden stash? Yeah, I'll call it a hidden stash instead of a hidden gem. You should definitely try this game, especially on what you can do to Murdoch at the end of the game, for leaving you stranded in Vietnam. You can turn him into a frog. Like the 2019 film Midway, 1943 The Battle of Midway puts players in the thick of it during one of the most iconic battles of World War II. I love the game on the NES, but it actually started as an arcade game. I remember seeing the game and begging my mom for quarters so I could play it and avenge Pearl Harbor. As an adult, I realized this game's a little strange because it's made by Capcom, a Japanese company, and it's about the US Navy attacking a Japanese fleet. Did they release this in Japan? Can you imagine playing a game where you're a Japanese bomber blowing up American ships in Pearl Harbor? That would be messed up. Anyway, the NES version was different in that it had RPG elements like upgrading weapons and defenses, and I really liked the graphics and music of the home console release. And even though I didn't have to worry about porters, there was still a surge of urgency when that low health music kicked in, and you're on the hunt for health packs.
Jennifer, we have a problem. Tell the captain the bad news. Hurry!
Panic, calm down, ladies. Now, are there any other problems?
Captain, we've run out of coffee.
Damn, if I told him once, I told him 100 times. Store extra coffee!
And with that, we reached the end of this list. There aren't all winners by today's standards, but these are the games I liked growing up. Have you played any of these? Did you play another military game on the NES that I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments so I can add them to my impossible long video game backlog. Okay, if you'll excuse me, I'll get back to playing something without war going on and something that isn't stressful to play, like Gilligan's Island. Thanks for watching, and remember, gaming is your road to adventure.